For the last 4 years, our lives have been mainly schoolwork, preparation for the adult life on the horizon. Time has wrought a change in us. Nothing is the same as it once was. As my classmate Caleb told me, pick something and it had not been that way before. And yet, amidst all the swirling mist of change, there's something looming solidly in the background. Something that wasn't there when we started high school. Something that we saw in our parents, but not in us, not until recently. It is the knowledge of God, the steady realization that He is here with us. He is our rock, our friend, and more than anything, it has become a passion with us to glorify Him. As 1 Corinthians says, "Therefore, whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God." My parents had drummed that verse into me, and it had the desired effect. I know that, frankly, I am human and only human. But in a lot of ways, that freed me, especially when I began attending junior college. Faced with a collective worldview so wildly different than the Christian one, I began to understand what it means to glorify God, and how important it is to do so. To begin with, the Bible tells us we're supposed to, in Romans 15:6, that you may, with one mind and one mouth, glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. But beyond that, we actually have reasons to want to worship Him. For me, the knowledge that someone who is perfect purified my imperfections by dying for me leaves me shaken. As Job's friend Zophar asked, "Can you find out the deep things of God? Can you search out the limits of the Almighty? They are higher than heaven. What can you do? Deeper than Sheol. What can you know?" And though the question was wrongly put, it still rings true. I flatter myself that as one fond of literature, I've encountered some of the heights and depths humanity can reach, and yet not a single one of my favorite characters can aspire to such heights as that. As Elizabeth Browning said, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." We want to glorify God to the best of our abilities, but our abilities are still only just beginning to develop, thanks to our education and our godly parents. Our biblical foundations have been formed, our passions, talents, and ideals have been formed, and we're learning to apply them to our own lives. Now is the time of making connections, of understanding consequences, of seeing the bigger picture, and our place in it. Education has shown us how best we can glorify God. It's shown us how God is alive, is real. Our experiences in high school have helped to give us a goal. Though some of us are still seeking God's direction, others of us want to be arborists, prosecutors, and professors. My favorite author and apologist, Dorothy L. Sayers, wrote an essay called The Lost Tools of Learning, in which she aptly described the purpose of education. The sole true end of education is simply this: to teach a man how to learn for themselves, and whatever instruction fails to do so is simply effort spent in vain. To learn for themselves, not to be spoon-fed information like so many fledglings in a nest. To learn to discern between fact and fiction, fact and opinion, meaning and connotation, between fundamentally right and wrong. And once we know a thing to be a right or wrong, it is our duty to uphold it. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does it not, to him it is sin. Our education has forced us to grow mentally and spiritually, and having a biblical perspective on the things we've learned has shown us the difference between being in the world and not of the world. Hence, the necessity of loving God has become so much nearer to our hearts. In the end, the passing of knowledge is a function of education, the fundamental love of learning, its purpose. No discussion of education amongst us especially would be complete without giving thanks. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Ferdiani, for leading Harvest Christian Academy. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Gowan, for your constant readiness and help. Thank you to all the countless people who have been instrumental in our lives over the years. The grandparents, the uncles and aunts, the pastors, mentors, teachers, speech and debate coaches, friends, and finally, and most importantly, parents. Thank you, not just for academics, but for the passions and ideals you've bequeathed to us, the splendid biblical foundation we stand upon. There had to be someone to teach us to love learning, and as I grow older, I realize more and more how brave my parents are, to brave the storms of public disapproval, to make sure that no opportunity was lost for a bit of learning, to keep us indoors during school hours, not to mention giving up free times and privacy for everything from grubby hugs and sticky kisses to darkly muttered words about the state of the union and the socialistic aspects of government today. Dad, Mom, 1,000 thanks from each of us to all of you. Your love, wisdom, and guidance have been appreciated, even though we don't always say it. Jessica in particular wants to say thank you for taking on my education at home, for teaching me and being patient and understanding through the various seasons over the past 4 years, but over my entire 18 years especially. Well said. Now we ask for something else. By God's grace, you've prepared our minds for action. You've set us on the right road. The heavens declare the glory of God, says Psalms 19. But if one only begins to dig, as education has shown us to do, they don't only declare but shout the glory of God. The growing part He's had in our lives as we've begun maturing has highlighted the change in us. We can see how we've changed. We've gone from ignoring God because He was big and didn't fit into our plans to finding Him intrinsically necessary. Once upon a time, our passions were playing house or cars, but now they're to live in the service of God. That's widened our horizons explosively. Enough, we dare to think, to assume responsibility for ourselves, to begin going out into the world, to dare to stand up for what we believe in, what we know to be right according to the Bible. We stand on the brink of adulthood, at the door of our homes, and see time standing with giants on his shoulders, waiting for us. He has his orders to let us join the throng of people following him as he marches inexorably on to the horizon God has set for him. Only God can know what will be in the future, whether we will stand as strong, godly men and women throughout time. But for now we have such dreams. No one of our age has ever taken power, said William Wilberforce in the movie Amazing Grace, to which his friend William Pitt replied, which is why we're too young to realize certain things are impossible, which is why we will do them anyway. We are indeed young, but God is yet working in us. Maybe we'll never stand above the rest of the people, but God has given us talents and passions, and with your prayers, we promise to at least use those for His glory. Thank you.